Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, spelled M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of pruplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com. Here with Mr. Joe Oberle.
Morning.
Who is the editor of those two sites. He also writes for thesportspost.com. And we are joined by Luke Braun, who is the third cog in the wheel Wednesday nights on the Purple Journal podcast. And the reason that Luke is here, and Luke also writes for Purple PTSD Vikings Territory and co-hosts the Pocket Protectors.
I only come on after super emotionally devastating primetime losses.
That's when you're in your prime.
God, that means Joy's here.
I figured
it's not always prime time.
Yeah.
Okay.
After that game too, I figured we might bring up the Kirk Cousins argument from the off season. But we have a very, very special guest today, Mr. Chad Greenway, who really doesn't need an introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. All-Pro, Pro Bowler, All-State in South Dakota, just accolades left and right. I pulled up your Wikipedia page because I am a professional, and owner of Grey Duck Vodka, which is the reason that he is here. Woo! So thanks for coming, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. I've heard about you guys many times over my career. Kind of followed a little bit about that world of that you guys lived in, and now that I'm in the gen pop now after my career. So it's been fun to follow. You guys always do a lot of good content. As a player, it's always kind of funny to follow stuff like you guys that put out.
It's scary to hear.
We can get into that, but player, we'll talk about that later. But
we go delete an article real quick.
Excited to be on with you guys. Fun, looking forward to it, and just to see if I can add some content for you. So let's get it done.
Yeah, awesome. Much appreciated. First off, what is Grey Duck Vodka? I'm sure people listening get the name of it, but they might be surprised that it's yours. So if you wanted to get into that.
Yeah, so basically, you think back to the Soldier Field last year, right? Kyle Rudolph scores a touchdown. They do the duck, he calls it duck goose celebration in the end zone. It sparks this controversy, of course, that Minnesota's the duck Grey Duck state, as we all know. And so my two now business partners that I did not know at the time, they live in Lakeville. They came up with this concept that they were going to do this branding of Grey Duck, and just they didn't really know what product they were going to bring up, and they decided and settled on vodka. Well, basically a friend of a friend. So as how things work out, Sean Considine, who played in the NFL for about 8 years, knows one of my business partners, grew up with him, that connected us, and he brought up the concept to me, and I said, for me to be in back a vodka brand is a little bit outside of my comfort zone, just because of the reputation I have and the type of guy I am. Not that I don't like vodka, just wasn't one of my things. But when I got offered ownership and partnership, that was really it made it a little different. Made it seem like it was more valuable to me to be able to go out and raise a brand and a trademark and really kind of brand this appropriately and to Minnesotans, to Vikings fans, and really the area that I grew up in, South Dakota, and then obviously we're going to be going to Iowa soon, so where I went to college. So it kind of makes a lot of sense for this region. So that's kind of the basics of it. Is we are basically playing off of the kids' game. Yeah. And what we found is now we launched in August, and it's just been kind of a wildfire these last 4 months of just crazy growth. We're now in 3 states. We went to South Dakota, North Dakota. We're obviously in Minnesota. We'll be going to Iowa shortly. And what we found is that obviously Vikings fans are everywhere. They're crazy passionate no matter where you go. And it's funny that this Grey Duck trademark and kind of branding and even kind of just conversation matters to people, and they love it. They love that it's Minnesotan. They love that it's made here. So yeah, a lot of great things about it. It's been fun to be a part of, and something completely different than what I ever thought I'd be doing.
And you don't have to give Kyle Rudolph any residuals for the name.
That's a good question.
Well, I wish funny that Kyle couldn't even be involved because he plays. So active players can't have any role in the promotion or sales of spirits. It's an NFL rule.
Is it just spirits, or does that extend to beer or?
Well,
wine?
I think it's just spirits. To be honest with you, I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, it's strange how that happens. I was trying to work with the Vikings a couple weeks ago. The head of the PR department, I promised him a bottle of top shelf something, and I went to the post office to mail it, and I guess it's illegal to mail spirits from person to person, so it's still like 1930s, 20s-esque laws in some fashion.
Yeah, you basically can't. You have to use like a courier service or have somebody where you still have to have it signed off on because it is possible to do. You just have to use the right form of transport. Basically.
And in South Dakota, growing up, were you a goose guy, a duck?
Totally duck goose guy. Yeah, I can't sit here and lie to anybody. Duck goose guy. But then now again, I have 4 kids that were Minnesotans and played duck, gray duck, and it was ironic. We were down in Texas a couple weeks ago for the MEA weekend. The kids had off of school, and we went and visited Cullen Loeffler, the long snapper, long-time long snapper for the Vikes.
Yeah.
Down in Austin, and his kids were born in Minnesota and also played duck, gray duck. So we're literally eating at a barbecue joint, in Austin, Texas. They're everywhere, and we're on basically on the side of a road, like attached to a gas station. We're eating like the best barbecue we've ever had, and our kids are out back in the playground playing duck, gray duck. And my kids haven't played duck, gray duck in like years, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're playing it. So yeah, all thanks to vodka.
So I looked that up, and I guess it's because Minnesota has a lot of Scandinavian people, and it's based on a Scandinavian way of doing that game. That ties into the Vikings a little bit more too, which is kind of cool, just from a brand perspective. One of the fan questions that we had for you, which came from, speaking of which, at Blonde Nordic, was about the type of vodka it is. Is it a wheat vodka? Is it a corn vodka? A potato vodka? And if you knew where that came from, like what are you getting? Minnesota corn, or?
Yeah, so it's kind of part of our story, and really the reason that people have kind of fallen in love with our product is we are completely Minnesota. So we buy Minnesota corn, and we buy it from a co-op up near. It's actually in Benson, Minnesota, and basically what they do is they go out and buy the corn. So it's all Minnesota product, and it's distilled right there in Benson at a distillery called Glacial Lakes.
Okay.
We then transport it to Brooklyn Park where it's filtered and bottled, and then we distribute it out of in Minnesota. We distribute it out of Minneapolis right now. And it goes all veins of the state and out to all locations that are certainly or currently supporting us. So yes, I mean that's kind of how it. And the beautiful part for us is being gray duck. It'd be pretty bad for a gray duck, a total Minnesota play on words, and the game would be made in Wisconsin. I guess
yeah.
It wouldn't go very well. So no, we're
cheese vodka.
We buy Minnesota corn, so corn's obviously gluten-free, so our vodka is gluten-free.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's if you guys have had a chance to taste it, it's a high-quality product. People have loved it. People love the flavor and taste, especially people who are sort of connoisseurs of vodka and the flavor. And
yeah.
But it's a very clean product. We do it right, and we do it all Minnesotan. So people, we really want people to rally behind and drink our product because we are Minnesotan over like a Tito's is made in Texas or some of these other that aren't domestic vodkas. We really love the fact that we're made here and made from 100% Minnesota product.
I always wondered about the name Grey Goose vodka. And Goose had heard of vodka, and now you have Grey Duck. It's really kind of interesting that you guys took that name.
Yeah, so when you trademark a product like that, you have to go through obviously to make sure that there's no arguments from any other companies that's like too close or lies too close to your name, and we didn't have any feedback or negative feedback at all from that company you mentioned. So
sorry.
No, it's and that's the thing is we're not we don't see ourselves as competitive. Obviously we're small and we're a startup and we're just kind of getting our feet wet with this thing, but that's just a completely different product, different price point than we are, and we're trying to much more competitively priced, where you spend enough money where it's a high quality product, but you're not breaking the bank just to pay some company in Europe more money.
Totally. And if a lot of people were asking where they can buy it. I know one of our sponsors is a product called Revitalite, which is like a Pedialyte for adults after they drink, and they have a store locator on their website. I don't know if you guys have the same thing. I was gonna hop on there and check.
Yeah, so basically what we have is, so in Minnesota with our distributor, we're in quite a few locations and growing really fast. And the best way and probably easiest way to find us is greyduckspirits.com, and we have an active where to buy map on there, so you can just kind of check your location, see what's the closest spot to buy. And quite honestly, we're growing fast and need to continue to grow faster because our production is there. There's bottles sitting there. We just need to continue to get it out to more and more people. So if you go and you go to a liquor store and they don't have it, the best way to do it is to go in and say, hey, let's get this product in here.
Definitely.
And we're using WRS Imports as our distributor, and they're out of Minneapolis, and they can get it anywhere in the state. We just need to make sure that the one thing we lack, and you guys I'm sure will appreciate this, as you guys have, I'm sure, been through the School of Hard Knocks from a startup standpoint, is we don't have a huge sales team. We don't have a big distributorship that we're working with in Minneapolis where we have 50 salesmen going around and filling orders.
Yeah.
Battling that a little bit. Whereas in South Dakota and North Dakota, we work with Johnson Brothers, and that's a big distribution company that has a big sales force. So you have boots on the ground going out to these locations and finding spots to fit it in. So we're still working through some of that stuff, and that's part of just the kind of the growing pains. But it's gone so well, and we've had so much support. It's been awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, one of my clients is a liquor store in South Minneapolis. McDonald's Liquor, ironically, had to deal with McDonald's, the restaurant, for a long time. In the regard you were speaking to earlier with names, but it might be a little different with spirits than beer, but there are laws about like selling directly, and the crux of it is if customers want it and make that known to a manager or an owner, they'll order it.
100%.
So if people are listening, you got to create that demand on your end, but that's, people, I always write down 2-3 things a week at McDonald's what things that we should order. So there's that.
That's just people wanting it and us saying, hey, our distribution's coming, we're getting closer to be able to pop and kind of go everywhere. But our distributor at the same time can do those things. But for example, like this weekend, obviously huge matchup against the Pack. Well, I'm sure we'll get into that here in a second. But
yeah,
we're super pumped because with Grey Duck, we're actually partnering with Eric the Red, which you Vikings fans know is the bar kind of right across from US Bank Stadium, basically right across the street. Is that 6th Street? Yeah, they're right across there. So we are actually partnering with Red Bull and Eric the Red. We're going to have a huge tailgate party preceding that game this weekend. So those are the type of partnerships that we're able to kind of get into and continue to kind of thrive on and just continue to grow at a pretty rapid rate. So if you guys are going to be around tailgate enjoying this cold weather, slap over to Eric the Red and get yourself some Grey Duck and get a drink and warm yourself up.
And I'll include some information about that on our network so people remember that's going on.
Perfect. Will you be playing Grey Duck over there before the...
I think, well, if you're there long enough, for sure. I mean, I think that's what we'll ask you.
So a lot of people asked about coaching and whether or not you were looking, when you retired, if that was an option with the Vikings or if you're currently coaching any of your kids' teams.
Yeah, so I coach my daughter's 5th grade basketball team. I'm actually quite passionate about that. I love it. She's my oldest daughter of 4. I'm also the president of the Wayzata Girls Basketball Association, so I'm pretty active in the youth community over here in our school district, and managing it, just kind of growing that game and getting it to kids. When I retired and really kind of had a plan of exiting the NFL, my strategy relied upon, I want to make sure that I can play long enough where I've exhausted all my abilities and exhausted my want and drive to go play. But also, from a financial perspective, is you want to make sure that, obviously played for a long time, and you want to make sure that you're in a place where you could comfortably go out, and my wife and I were fortunate enough to take care of our finances and do well, that we were able to do kind of whatever we wanted, essentially, kind of call our shot. And to be retired at 33, turning 34, essentially enjoy the rest of your life and not have to go do something unless you call your shot and say, hey, I want to do this.
Yeah.
So it came to like broadcasting or coaching. both those things interest me at a high level. I would love to coach. I love coaching youth sports. I don't know that I would love to coach in the NFL, and quite honestly, that's probably the last thing right now is on my mind is coaching at the NFL level. Now, high school level, much more passionate about doing something like that. Like that would be just fun to me. But just the collegiate level with the recruiting and the job placement and
like 120-hour work weeks.
Yeah, you're looking at my 4 kids and saying, well, Daddy's got to go to work. Well, do you? Do you really need to go to work? And I've always kind of prioritized my family over everything, and I've always maintained that. And no different now in retirement as I can, even with Grey Duck and the other things I do and the other companies that I represent. I also have a speaking business, but I can coordinate my entire calendar around my kid's schedule. And if I don't want to do it, I just say no. And that's the part that's giving me so much flexibility. So with coaching, to answer the question, it just doesn't give me any flexibility, and that's really something I cherish is the flexibility to have with my kids, my wife, enjoy them growing up before they're eventually gone and doing their own thing. And if I want to get back into it, I know I always have the relationships to do that. And very similar with broadcasting is you're essentially gone 3 days every week for half the year. And that's just not something that I wanted to get into. And, just for a check, especially when you're not making this, decisions and mentality changes, especially when you're not making decisions based off money. And that's kind of position that we were put in. And it's a fortunate position. We understand that. And we take advantage of it by spending as much time as we can with our kids. Unless some annoying group calls me and wants to do a podcast, and then I can't.
So my next question is, do you want to do a podcast?
Yeah. It's funny because Lieber and I obviously have a good rapport on the radio and other stuff we've done, and we've talked about doing a podcast, and Matt Burke has contacted us about doing some stuff, and we haven't put anything together, formally or officially of wanting to do that like on a consistent level. But I do think that'd be something that would be kind of fun because, as we're doing now, is you can do it from your office in your home or whatever, and you can put some content together that people would really like, and so that would be something I would potentially look at doing. But yeah, that's basically kind of the crux to answer your question about coaching.
So when we
podcast, except just do it about like cooking.
Yeah.
Like completely like everybody that knows your name that's going to know you because of football is going to be like, oh my God, these guys are doing a podcast. And you just talk about like baking recipes for an hour and a half.
I mean, I could get down with that. I'm fine with that. I'm about to fry this turkey on Thanksgiving, so we can talk about that.
Be careful. I heard those are, they can explode. So good luck.
If you're a moron, yes, that is possible.
So we chatted a little bit yesterday on Skype, old school style, and you mentioned that the Vikings seem to struggle in Chicago, and that held true Sunday night. And I was wondering if you could maybe explain from the perspective of a player why that is, or if that's something that comes into it as they're preparing and they're trying to overcome it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it was always sort of this phantom in Soldier Field, at least during my career, and Zimmer had sort of figured it out, until last week, a couple days ago here, that Soldier Field thing, there's just like a mystique about it. Like just for some reason, like you just didn't go out there and play your best football, and they always seem to get the right bounces, and they always seem to get the right calls, and then they get the turnover that kind of breaks your back, and it's like, oh my God, I watched this game on Sunday night, and I was like, wow, this is like my career just personified in Soldier Field. You end up crawling yourself back into the game, 5-point loss. They get that field goal at the end to kind of crush your chances. You go on, and as a player, you try to like, at the end of the day, you're trying to like figure out like, okay, why does this happen? I prepare how I prepare every week. And I go out and I'm ready to go, and I want to play well, and I'm focused, and I'm doing all the things I want to do. But sometimes, like in football, especially with the parity in the NFL, is like sometimes things just don't go your way. And I feel like Soldier Field is just one of those spots that like bad things just seem to happen to teams that go in there and try to play. No matter how the Bears are, they just seem like that's a place where they always get some sort of like just good thing happens to them. And maybe that's just maybe just a dumb athlete that's just looking into it too much, but it just seems that's the case. Yeah. And really what the coach's perspective would be is, go in there, focus, do your job, and make the plays when they come to you, and that will take care of itself. And there's a lot of truth to that. But yeah, it just always seemed to be one of those places. Then you look at the game on Sunday night and just like all that happened. Kirk throws just a terrible ball down in their end, and they get the pick six. It just was an absolute crusher.
Yes.
Dalvin with the fumble, crusher, these turnover. You can't turn the ball over in Soldier Field and expect to win. And then that crowd gets behind him, and that place can be a really hard place to play when that crowd's rolling. So, it's just kind of one of the things that leads one thing to another, and they make a play, and away they go. So I wish I had a better answer other than than that.
No,
but I wonder if it's like a divisional thing too, because they know you.
Yeah.
And you know that very well, and I feel like that changes a lot of the dynamic, especially, if there's a member of the Bears that's been there for 8 years and they've prepared against, a Chad Greenway-led defense for 8 years, they know you, and that just changes things, as opposed to, other road games against, random AFC opponents.
Well, I also think it gives them, to that point, is, almost like an air of confidence that isn't necessarily warranted, because we played these guys at Soldier Field 5 years in a row, and they've always found a way to lose the game. So we're going to go win this game, and just to give them more confidence. And sports in general, I don't care what level you're at, fourth grade girls to NFL, it's all about confidence. And every year we'd go to Soldier Field, and in the back of my mind is we always figure out a way to lose this game. I don't want to say that. I would never say it publicly to somebody asking me that question, but in the back of my mind, as a human, you're just we always figure out a way to screw this up. And then
can't shake it.
Game, even though I put every hour of work and blood, sweat, and tears in the game prep and off season and the whole thing, you go into that game and just knowing something stupid is going to happen.
So what do you tell the players the next day after a loss like that? Do you say some of you don't talk about what you're talking about? You talk about the X's and O's and what went wrong? Or what does Zimmer say to you guys?
Oh, yeah. From a coaching standpoint, obviously that's never the reason. But, in the locker room, we're talking about those things because, we keep it pretty real in the locker room about, why the hell do we play so bad in Soldier Field? What happened? What was Brooks Ballinger doing in 2007 to throw that ball in the corner? Just all these crazy things that happened. But Zimmer's coming at it from his perspective, like I said earlier, is it doesn't matter where we play the game. We can play the Bears in a parking lot. It's about you doing your job and focusing on your job and on the task at hand. And we didn't make enough plays. And, you look at the film and Greenway's out of position on this play and Barr's out of position on that play. And Linval Joseph didn't fill the gap on this play. And that's why they got this run. Or that's why Trubisky got out of the pocket and rolled out. So, the tape never lies. And as a player, you go in on that Monday, and that's why you go through every snap. In a loss like that, you would go through most of the snaps with Zimmer running the show, and he would go through every play, every position, and break down where the issues were. And that's why, in the NFL, there is such a level of accountability from that level that you kind of wish you had across all avenues of work, because people are held accountable to the 10th degree every week. If you make a mistake, you're about to get popped on film in front of your whole teammates, and they're going to show you why you screwed up, how you screwed up, and how bad you screwed up.
Especially with analytics becoming more and more of a thing.
Yeah, analytics, to be honest, don't really come into. They do to a point when it comes down to game planning, but analytics, on post-game stuff, isn't really involved yet. Coaches aren't that into. Coaches aren't that into it. Now there's people on staff that are, but
Zimmer especially.
Zimmer and a lot of the staff. These guys are all from the 70s, 80s, 90s coaching. They don't. Look at McVay. Now you ask McVay, analytics plays into his game planning probably pre and post game. But Zimmer, I would say much less, just from the school of thought that they come from.
I don't think it's quite there in terms of evaluating players too. But I think what coaches can do looking at film is probably just going to be more informative than any analytic can
not even close. 100%. 100% right.
But you can also look at hey, we do better on second and long out of this formation. Exactly. That's analytics, and that kind of thing can totally help you. So it's just a matter of applying it smartly and not just doing it for, as a blanket.
Exactly, and like you said, there's different types of analytics too. When you're talking about game planning and what they do in this situation, when it's 37 degrees outside, is something that you're going to probably take into account to your game plan. But when it comes down to these others, we can get into the analytics conversation, the Pro Football Focus, and trying to force yourself to listen to Chris Collinsworth. Hard enough, but the reality is,
thank you, man.
But the Pro Football Focus stuff is really came into play in my career. And you would watch a game back. Me personally would watch a game back, and I would know that I played let's say, really well that week, and I graded out at 95% in coach's film and made 12 tackles, and maybe I missed 2 or whatever. And you go and look at your Pro Football Focus grade, because that was kind of back to that conversation of us players are pretty aware of what's going on around us and what people are saying. The Pro Football Focus grade would have me at like a 72. And it would make you just irate, because people that don't know that ain't worth a shit. And they don't know what they're talking about. Now, to their credit, they've gotten better. And more informed. It's come a long ways. But it's just not quite there yet.
Is it just a matter of they don't know what you're actually supposed to be doing on that play, thus they can't really analyze it?
Well, they can make generalities, right? Like, they can see you play defensive end or you play outside linebacker, and I expect you to do this play's coming at you. Like, this should be your job. Well, in reality, like, I played outside linebacker, but I could get the same play from the same defense, but if we were in a different call, I might have to do 3 different things. So you can say I did that wrong, but you don't really know, because you don't know what coverage we were in. You don't know what run fits we were in, because that changes with every scheme and every my run fit in over 3 is different than it is in like an over 6 or an over 4 or an over 2. Like, they're all different, because you have people fitting in from the back end much differently. So that's where that can change, like, on a real basic level. And then coverage is, I mean, unless it's just squared up man to man and I got beat and the guy made the catch, like, you don't know in my zone coverage, like, who I'm working with for the most part. Like, you may have an idea, a general idea, but you don't know specifically on each play, where you might give me a positive. In reality, I blew it, and I was supposed to be guarding somebody else, but hey, I knocked the ball down, so I got a pass breakup. Well, dude, you were supposed to be on the running back. Like, they don't know that stuff.
Okay.
I know that in like the last few
on every
years.
week as a guest. That's all there is to it. We're having chat.
What's that?
Yes.
He was saying he wants you on a guest every week, as a guest every week, because we always have the struggle. Joe's old school, Luke's really plugged into the analytics side, and I am an emotional wreck.
Yeah, I do another show with a member of Pro Football Focus about like their analytics, and I know that like in the last couple of years they've kind of shifted to focus their grades more on like execution, where it's like, okay, you can see that like this was cover 2 and this guy came into your zone and then he got a catch in your zone, and they basically will just like downgrade you for that. And if that wasn't necessarily your fault, they're like kind of okay with that being, that much of a miss. And if they're ever unsure, like if there was a blown coverage, they don't know whose fault it was, they'll just zero everybody out.
Right. Well, the funny part is, like, and this is actually, that's a good point you brought up, because when we played cover 2 all the time,
it was crazy.
My career, right? So the tight end would catch 6 out of 7 balls in my zone of cover 2, right? Well, if you're taught how to play cover 2, like, that you can't jump a route in cover 2, because if you jump a route, that Drew Brees is going to hit the drive route behind you for 21 yards because you jumped up on the tight end. So yes, the tight end caught a ball, and he caught 6 catches for 42 yards or whatever it was. And on paper, it looks like I'm terrible in coverage because the dude caught 6 out of 7 on me. Well, in reality is when you drop into a cover 2 zone, like, you're not matching up like a matchup zone. And now when Zimmer came in, like, our zone coverage was much different. Like when a guy comes into your zone, you're playing him man to man. But when you drop him back in cover 2, like, I don't have that guy man to man. I'm in cover 2, so I play my zone. So it's much more flexibility on a receiver being able to catch a ball in your zone. Now it's up to you stopping them, making them drive 80 yards, keeping everything in front of you, the conversation, which is why I had 1 million tackles, but they might catch 4 to 6 balls on me. So that's the part where it's frustrating from a player perspective.
And, like, it's hard to tell if, like, the tight end runs up the seam and you're supposed to, like, pass that off Jasper to Brinkley or whatever. Then it's hard to tell, like, did you not carry him far enough, or did Jasper Brinkley not react quickly enough? Like, that's always going to be super hard to tell, like, where that line is.
Good
right,
point.
for sure. But I do think analytics, I mean, that's obviously where every game is going. I mean, look at the NBA and the three-point shot. I mean, they have it tracked, each shot from each location on the floor. If you shoot a 15-footer in the NBA, you're the biggest idiot, because that, on average, that is like worth 0.98 points for every shot, where a three-pointer is like 1.6 points for every shot. So, like, that's where the analytics have gone. And I think that in football, the smart teams, are the same ones that are hiring clock management personnel, like, to handle clock management situations at the end of games or end of halves, because you can talk about the parity of the NFL, and these games come down to 3 points. Even look at last night, million points scored, but it still came down to a 3-point game where clock management and decisions at the end of halves and games end up winning you or losing you 3 to 4 games a year. And if you can have a person on staff that you pay X amount of dollars to say that's your job, to study the analytics of when do we take a timeout? How do we take a timeout? What's the down and distance situation where we want to take one, or whatever the situation is. And I think from analytics standpoint, you need to have multiple people on staff handling each side of the ball to just give information to coaches, either in game or during the week, however you wanted to use it to maximize that.
There's your job, Chad. That's what you should
do. No, it's too much study and work.
So I wanted to have one last question, and I appreciate you answering these so thoroughly. Just about the team in general.
Real
You're
quick,
gonna
Joe.
Take off.
I'm gonna take off, but it's been a pleasure, Chad.
I appreciate it, man. Yep, good talking to you.
So I noticed that we do a live chat for every game, and I noticed even in the first half, fans, readers, listeners were really apocalyptic about what was going on. They were basically saying, the season's over. Why didn't they draft more offensive linemen? So on and so forth. And I've heard a lot of that since. And in rewatching the game this morning, I felt like it wasn't completely similar to the Saints game, but I do get the feeling that the Vikings had every opportunity to win this game, and they kind of gave it away through turnovers. And I'm not sure whether or not I should be optimistic about that and say, well, if they can fix that, then they can play with anybody. I mean, they should have beat the Saints, so on and so forth. So I wanted your take on the state of the team and whether people anointing the Bears as like the torch being passed to them from the Vikings or Packers is warranted from your point of view.
All right. Well, a couple things. I always got into this, especially as a player, when you're going week to week and people are asking you about your season and where you're at in your season, and you always will say, well, we're in this thing and we should have won that game. We could beat anybody. We're a team that's good enough to beat anybody, and that's kind of what we all think of the Vikings right now is we can beat. We played with the Rams and probably should have beat the Rams, and obviously the Bills game we throw out. Right, Saints game first half was a game. Second half they kind of beat us up and won that game. But the reality is like we're in those games. I think as fans, we're looking at it as like we feel like we can beat these teams. But the reality is we're not. So what you start to look at is, okay, why aren't we, right? And Monday night is clearly we had an issue with protection. Then we had an issue with turnovers and all these things, and then that kind of sparks the Kirk Cousins debate and the money we spend and all these kind of, like you said, apocalyptic conversations about our organization and where we're at and need to blow the thing up and start over. And part of that starts with the beginning of the season, and we had this with when Donovan McNabb came in. We had these expectations so high for this team that 14-2 and 13-3 were like the only thing we looked at and said we have to be this or it's a failure. And right now we're not that. And to the credit of our team is we have dealt with some pretty massive injuries. Now that's part of the game. Everybody's done that. That's part of the deal. But
nine
it's been also to keep positions, right? So we have to just kind of keep a level head and say, listen, we still have everything in front of us. You look at our schedule and say, if we are going to make the playoffs, it's because we deserve to be there. Because the teams we're about to play to finish this thing out,
right.
It's going to be. I mean, it's going to be a challenge. And if we can make it to the playoffs with this push, it means that we deserve to be there. And quite honestly, we have a chance to beat anybody. And that's the part that I look at and say, are we going to make the playoffs and just limp in and say, hey, we made it, great? Or are we going to be a team that when we make it, we actually can beat these teams? And we know this year if we make it, it's because we can beat anybody because of the schedule we have in front of us.
My thought always at this level is that the teams and the athletes are so close in talent that you hear any given Sunday. And I think it's true. If you're not emotionally prepared and mentally prepared for that game, anybody can beat you. And so it's a grind. And I mean, from your perspective, is that true? I mean, are they all that close in talent that you have to be on and ready to go every game, or else just that little margin you're going to get beat?
Every game doesn't matter where it is or who it is. My whole career, how many games I played, I don't know, 100 and something. and that's quite honestly, as you age as an NFL player, and you start touching your 30s and 31, 32, 33, you got 3, 4 kids at home, and you spent the whole week trying to raise your kids and prepare for a game and do all these things. It gets so hard to balance because when it's 12 o'clock on Sunday and you got to play the Bills in Buffalo, you better be mentally locked in and ready to roll, because you got to go there and put out your best effort for multiple reasons. Because A, you need to win, B, you want to keep your job. All these things are kind of factoring. So it becomes this battle with yourself weekly to just, like you said, it's a grind to get yourself back, get your mind back and ready to roll, get your confidence back maybe after a tough loss, physically get back, from injury or from just being bumps and bruises and just being nicked up from general football. So it's a grind. These guys are on a grind, and I think as a fan of when you have an NFL player who gets paid, fans automatically think that it's okay to criticize and to be hard on these guys because they're getting paid. They're entertaining us, and because they're getting paid, it's okay for us to criticize these guys at a high level. And I do get that. I get it. And I've been criticized many hundreds of times in my career, warranted and for good reason. But the problem becomes is you don't understand that I can go out and prepare as hard as I can. I can be one of the top players in my position in the league and go out and perform poorly because these other dudes are dudes. They're good players, and they're getting paid, and they're trying to get contracts, and they have fantasy and all these things we can talk about. So the reality is your best player. Look at Harrison Smith. He's the best, one of the best safeties, if not the best safety in the league. You watch that game on Sunday. He made some critical errors.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yep.
It's just the way it goes. And you can look at every team. Look at the Rams last night. Their win, they're 10-1, wherever they are. I mean, their defense gave up 51 points.
Yeah.
Today, how are you going to win a Super Bowl giving up that many points to a team? Again, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they have great offense. I get that. But at the same point, they get 51 points. You think Zimmer's going to come back and be like, okay, guys, we got the win. Great job. No, he's going to roast our butts for giving up 51 points. So it just the level of, you said it, just this level of
parity.
Season's over. This is just everybody's running around. It's just everybody's got to just, I won't say relax because the other guy said it from across the other state, but just calm down. We have time in front of us to figure this thing out. Now, as a fan, we've gotten used to saying that, and it's tough, right? But the reality is this weekend is huge for this football team, and they got to figure it out this weekend because if they don't get this one, now you're talking about the season really being over.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're you look at the NFC, and there's plenty of opportunity. I mean, they're the wild card. I mean, if you don't get the division, the wild card is there. I mean, the Vikings are sixth right now. Anyway, they're in a wild card spot, and these other teams that are battling for them are right around the same area. So you just take care of your business, and it's certainly not woe is me. So I mean,
right. Especially this home game coming up. I mean, that's the thing in the NFL is if you 7-1, 6-2, 8-0 at home. I mean, your chances of doing some stuff are pretty good, and that's where we have to own our home field, and it's got to start this weekend.
Yeah, and gotta work on them turnovers. That's the key.
Yeah, that helped.
But one last time, what is the website for Grey Duck Vodka? It's greyduckspirits.com.
It is, yeah, greyduckspirits.com. You can there's a where to buy link on there. You can learn more about kind of our product, what makes us up, who we are. But where to buy is the biggest thing because you can go on there and click. If you live in South Minneapolis or you live in St. Cloud, you can figure out what's the closest spot to go get some Grey Duck. And really how we're looking at this thing is this is a movement away from buying what we always hear as well as vodka. It doesn't really matter what kind I drink because it all tastes the same, or I mix it with something or whatever. And that conversation is fine for us because we know we're a good product and we're made here. So. We're the Vikings vodka. So if you're a Vikings fan, if you're a Chad Greenway fan, if you're a fan of vodka in general, and you live in Minnesota, if you're a Grey Duck fan, you should be drinking us over anything else. And once you taste it, you realize that you made the right choice.
Yeah, it should be the go-to Sunday vodka for sure. Like we said,
what's the Vikings? I mean, I always, we talked earlier. I always used to ask in the locker room for my bet with my cousin over beer what the Vikings record would be. In 2014, you came off 7-9, and you told me 11-5, and I scoffed at it, and you said, "You don't think so?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And sure enough, 11-5, and
wow.
I made beer. So you were spot on 9 times out of 10. So you got to tell me how they're going to finish out this year. You think?
Ooh, that's a good final question.
Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. Come on, what's their record right now?
5-4-1. Yeah, same as the Packers.
5-4-1. But 6 left.
Couple tough ones in there too. It's
9-6-1.
Okay, that's what I said a couple weeks ago too. So
9-6-1. We'll get that last wild card spot.
Yep, I could get it done. It's great.
Remember too, if you're listening and you want to try Grey Duck and the liquor stores near you don't have it, ask for it and they will get it for you. Also, check out the article that'll be linked to this for information on the tailgate event this Sunday before the Packers game at Eric the Red, I believe you said?
It is, yeah. Eric the Red will be down there, I think, starting at 5:20, I think 2 hours before game start.
Awesome. But we definitely, man, really, really appreciate you coming on the show. This was really, really cool.
Great to hear from you. Sounds like you're doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got a few irons in the fire, but mostly just wrangling the kids, man, and coaching some basketball. So I'm football, life after football has been really good for me. But it's been mostly because I've been a Viking for life, and was a Viking for life, and am a Viking for life, that the community now embraces me in a different way, than I think they do other former Vikings. So, and I love this community. So that's what's been fun for us. And we love it, Minnesota. We'll be here for life now and raise our kids. And so, yeah, I appreciate all the fans out there listening.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me. Let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Take her easy.
All right, see ya.
Yeah, later. So, Joe, I think we're doing things a little differently this week with in terms of Tales of the Tape, just because we had Greenway on the show.
Fascinating conversation. I just
big time.
That,
no, that makes sense. I mean,
for me, and I thought it was really interesting to hear analytics from his perspective,
yes.
We talk about this all the time on the show because Luke and I like to spar a little bit, but I certainly appreciate the value of analytics and what it adds to analysis of football games. It's nice to hear that other side of it too, because they don't say that much during the season. I mean, Zimmer used to bark a little bit about it, but even he's starting to embrace it a little bit, and so it was fun to hear it. We kind of went off there more than maybe just talking about the Vikings per se, but it was fun.
It was cool to hear that he was cognizant of the coverage of the sites, that sort of thing. That he could have just been being nice, but that was amazing. But yeah, I mean, it would have been big time. But it would have been a lot better had the Vikings pulled out that game on Sunday night. Like I said, there seems to be just a lot of people saying all right, the season's over on Twitter, Facebook, so on and so forth. A lot of people are down on Cousins. There was an article in GQ from a Vikings fan who lives in the DC area titled "Cousins may never get it," and he was basically ripping Cousins trying to make a positive out of the way the game went. He said Cousins said that he was humbled by the game, but that he also learned some things that'll be positive moving forward. And the writer, building off of what Chad said about how you kind of talk about players, that you think some people think they have carte blanche to say whatever they want just because these guys make a lot of money, and that article was a little too dead spinny for me. It had a lot of expletives in it, which I was surprised with GQ. I don't know if that's how they roll there, but it seemed kind of unprofessional. I'm not gonna lie, as the de facto Kirk Cousins guy, that was rough. You look at that, you look at the Saints game, you look at the Bills game, you look, you gotta say, well, those are 3 losses that weren't, I'm not saying they were completely his fault, but I'm getting that from other people, and so.
Well, then you got to say all the other wins are his fault. That's
that's it. It is a team game, but those are glaring mistakes. And
no question. I anticipated this conversation between you and me today because you're a major proponent of Cousins, and I was cautiously optimistic coming in. I was concerned about the money like everybody was, but as soon as this contract signed, I never thought a second about the money again. It's just the way it is. But he, some of the things that we heard about him coming in were coming to roost. He looked a little nervous back there. He looked a little skittish, and he threw some uncharacteristic passes for this season. That one to the pick six to Treadwell was clearly a mistake, which he owned up for and said he read it wrong. And he did kind of try to couch it in language saying, well, it's moving at this pace. I thought he was going to be squatting.
Squatting was the worst, yeah.
Yes. And I get that. There's no way in God's green earth that somebody the Vikings would sign tomorrow would come in and probably do better. It's just not the way it is. He made a mistake. That happens. It happens. You better be able to accept that it was a bad time for it. Zimmer didn't want to do it. Zimmer had the offensive line's back, and he seemed to put a little bit more of it on Cousins than them. But I'm sorry, that was one of the best defensive fronts you're going to face all year, and they were on fire. And
did Compton get benched, or did he get hurt? Because according to Pro Football Focus, he was awful. He had a 6.8 out of 100. He gave up 5 pressures, 1 sack, and then he was replaced by Isadora. So either the injury flared up, but a 6.8.
That's not good. I mean,
Riley Reef,
you had Elfline getting beat. What's his name on the left? Riley Reef.
Riley Reef was getting dominated. And then here's my thing, Joe.
Swat by Khalil Mack when he knocked him on his feet.
Yes. And here's my thing about that. At halftime, what's that gal's name from Minnesota?
Michelle
Tafoya. She said, I talked to Zimmer, and he said they're probably going to start helping Reef out on the left side. And I was like, really? Why didn't you go into the game doing that? Why didn't you maybe do some hurry-up offense, more shotgun stuff, or the quick throws that you were talking about going into the game? They seem to want to come in and impose their will with the running game. Who knows? Maybe if Cook doesn't fumble, things are different.
It kind of changes things, but that's a good point. It's funny, bringing up Michelle Tafoya, because I was going to bring her up as well. In fact, I did in our chat that you bailed on halfway because you couldn't take it anymore.
I'm sorry. I just couldn't. I was so upset.
Anyway, I don't know. She's really good. Michelle's really good. I met her a long time ago when she was working for covering the Timberwolves, and I said, "What the heck are you doing here?" Because I thought she was so good, and sooner or later she was gone. But anyway, you wonder how much the coaches give her in those moments at halftime, because Zimmer also said we got to do something different with Trubisky, like trying spying him. And I thought, that was going to be the plan going in. I go,
yes,
what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And that's great. That's a halftime adjustment. But man,
it worked.
Wild. Yeah. So that's where I came away from that interview saying, whoa. And they did change things up. And he did stop running and getting out of the pocket.
It worked.
Yeah. So I don't know, Joe. I guess I don't understand that mentality. I think I would have seen it at the end of the first quarter. I said, okay, go to spy mode,
I was trying to find the third down numbers before the show this morning, because that, the Vikings were on the verge of being the best in NFL history, at least according to Nagy when they were talking about interviewing him about the Vikings, and that just didn't happen. I know it's a hard place to play. Trubisky was slippery, but at the same time, in rewatching the game and not being a little more emotionally removed from it, this isn't. I don't want to say it's this apocalyptic thing, because the Vikings had every single chance to win that game, and I would argue that they should have. I mean, they we're pointing out the negatives here, but they had every opportunity. If not for that pick six, obviously things are different. Who knows if the Bears were in garbage time and just giving up yardage to Diggs, but it's just really disappointing. What did we say last week? I think I said when I picked the Bears to beat the Vikings that I just kept having visions of Cousins turning the ball over. I more thought it would be like at the last second or during a comeback attempt or something. But it's just really too bad. I know the team, well, maybe not. I was going to say I know the team doesn't pay attention to what the media says. But
maybe that is right.
But you have to think that, the fans are completely, defeated at this point. And, that can change. They're playing the Packers. If they smoke them, all's well in Vikings land. You're right. They have every opportunity to make the postseason. But the more I look at this, the more I think this is the first year of a 3-year, not experiment, but situation. And,
it should be good next year. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the Vikings did really, even before Zimmer, stock up on guys in the secondary because they were going against Stafford and Rodgers. And I have to think that going against Khalil Mack and Hicks, maybe that'll be the catalyst for them spending a lot of first-round picks on offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen especially.
Either that or trade. They have to do something. I wrote in my game wrap. I said, say what you will about him, but if with this kind of front here and some of the in the NFC, you've got the Rams, you've got the Saints. If you want to compete over the next few years, something's got to change. It's got to get better one way or the other. Anyway, oh God, I forgot what I was going to say. But I it's Cousins is it's just uncharacteristic throws, and
what do you attribute that to, though? Do you think that he's been hit so much that he has just got that clock? Well, in his head.
I guess part of it might be intimidation. Those are big over there. And if you got Khalil Mack, and you've already seen one, he watches the games. He does. You hear him talking about it in the locker room. He watches the games, and he knows what's coming his way, and he knows how. I heard someone say, I can't remember who it was, that maybe he's finally realizing that this is the line he's going to have, and it's not going to get any better, and so he's got to. And then someone else said, it might even have been Zimmer, said he hangs on the ball looking for that deep strike, along
Cousins.
Yeah.
He held onto the ball about a half second longer than he usually did, according to Pro Football Focus, and he didn't have any deep balls though.
Zimmer must have got that from analytics. Just kidding. Anyway, I wanted to touch on one thing you said about this goes back to what Chad said, about how the players got to get up every week and they got to be mentally and emotionally just jazzed to play. The Vikings fans have to do that this week. If they're going to walk around with their tails between their legs after losing in a place where they typically have lost and they haven't
by
played
5 points.
Yes, and a team that's on the rise, very clearly on the rise, are well coached, have a great offense, a defense that was good last year and even better this year. You guys picked against the Vikings. A lot of people knew that this was going to be a tough game. If you think woe is me, the season's over, you got to get up and get after it for this game. This is Packers week. I don't care what
the Vikings
you say.
The Vikings were what, 4 out of the last 5 they'd won?
Yes. I mean, or something like that. And this is a huge game. This is a huge game on your home turf. If you're going to go limping in there like, oh my God, the season's over, you're not going to. They're going. Zimmer was going to ask fans to start. Being as loud as heck. He loves it in there. He knows how much it helps his defense and how much it can, beat this. If they can turn this thing around, they beat the Packers convincingly, head on the road the next 2 weeks with a lot of confidence. I don't think, someone was saying they match up well with the 49ers, and I don't think that the Seattle is all that good that everybody's talking about. They have
no, I don't either. I watched that Packers game.
I think and I've said this to my brother who always gives me grief for being a homer. I said they'll still make the wild card, and right now they're the 6th team. If you want to be in the playoffs, you better be able to beat some of these teams, and so they will. I think we
still haven't beat a team with a winning record, though, and that's disconcerting. Not to interrupt you, but
that's okay. It's not to me because I just talking with Chad, I said these teams are all so close. I mean, the Packers are 4-5-1. Well, are they? Would you consider them a team with a winning record? They don't have one, but they're
they're going to be jazzed as hell too.
Exactly, and their season's on the line. Vikings, to a certain degree, is too. So if the fans are going to say that's over, well, then go ahead. Then you get to be right if you're right, or I'm psyched for this game. You got to throw. That's why I wanted Chad to say, put this game behind you and move on to Packers weekend.
And I usually do, and he did do that a little bit, which was nice.
Yep.
Man, he would be great on a podcast. Holy crap!
Yes, he would. Oh God, and a lot is always great, and I wanted to say that because he was a go-to guy. You knew you would get a thoughtful response, even if he's busy. He's gonna sit there and give you a response and not just the typical cliche. And he's very articulate. You could hear just the way he was going back and forth on the analytics with Luke, which I thought it was really fascinating. So
I always do a fortunately, unfortunately, or unfortunately, fortunately, depending on the outcome of the game. I did want to do that before we signed off here because there's a player who had a career night and who should be the starter moving forward and should have a contract extension, and that player is Anthony Harris.
Yes.
He had 2 interceptions. He had a great PFF grade. He doesn't get a lot of 15-yard penalties like Sendejo does. I just thought that he only had one pass thrown his way that was caught, and he defended against like 6 or 7 more. So.
Yep. And Zimmer thought he did good because he said afterwards, well, he's got some stuff to work. After he complimented me.
Of course.
Yeah. And my only tail of the tape for this week is, just because of the shortened thing, was that points off turnovers. The Vikings got 3 turnovers, and they ended up with 6 points off of them. That's where you lost the game right there.
Yep.
The Bears, on the other hand, took their 1 pick six and got 7 points out and beat them. In that stat. So it's one thing to get turnovers, but you got to score off of them. You got to score touchdowns and really put your break the heart of your opponent. And if then you can mitigate some of the ones you give up on your own side of the ball. But that's all. That to me was huge. Get those turnovers. If they score touchdowns off of 2 out of 3 of those, but even 1, and a field goal, that's 10 points off turnovers. Then they're right there at the end, and it's not just garbage points they're collecting.
Yeah, it's really too bad, but we still play them at home. We play the Packers at home this week. The Bears, they have a short week, and we'll play the up and down Lions. You never know. That's a divisional game. Those are wonky. They're coming off an emotional high, beating the Vikings. That could go the Vikings' way on Thursday. But I wanted to just say happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners and to everyone that supports the site and to you, Mr. Oberly. I am very thankful that we get to work together. I mean that genuinely. You're the greatest guy that I've ever worked with, and I'm getting a little teary-eyed to be completely honest with you.
I gotta go get some hankies and start,
Nice
to say I enjoy it, Joe. You do a great job with the site. You provide an opportunity for a lot of different people to express their passion about the Vikings, and you've done so many things to build these up, and you continue to put back into them. You got Chad Greenway out here today. I mean, that kind of thing that doesn't happen by falling off a log. So be thankful to yourself for the energy and effort that you put in here, because it's a great site and well deserved, and I enjoy working with you.
Thanks, man, and thanks to everyone that listens to this show. We will be back on Friday to do some in-depth analysis of the Vikings-Packers game. But definitely check out GreyDuckSpirits.com. I've heard really great things from people in different liquor stores or at McDonald's Liquor, rather. But with that, this has been Morning Joe's. Hope to hang out with you guys on Friday. Skål.